A humble nurse gave her only doll to a sick girl, not knowing she was the daughter of a CEO. The night was cold, the hospital eerily silent save for the distant beeping of monitors and the occasional shuffle of slippers across linoleum floors. Nurse Elina moved through the pediatric ward like a soft breeze, gentle unnoticed, but carrying warmth with every step. She had always been quiet, the kind of woman who didn't speak unless necessary, but whose actions shouted volumes of compassion. Raised in a modest village and orphaned at 12, Elina had clung to one possession her entire life. A small, cloth doll named Bella, hand-stitched by her mother during better days. Bella wasn't just a toy. She was Elina's anchor through storms of loneliness and grief. Her faded pink dress, the missing button eye, and the fraying yarn hair all held memories Elina never dared to forget. But tonight, something stirred in her heart as she stood outside room 214. Inside lay a fragile girl, no older than 7, her skin pale, her eyes hollow from days of relentless chemotherapy. The child hadn't spoken since being admitted. Doctors were baffled. Elina, however, had seen this look before, the silent cry of a child too tired to hope. That night, as Elina finished her rounds, she sat quietly beside the girl's bed. The child turned slightly, her eyes flickering with something almost invisible: fear, sadness, longing. Wordlessly, Elina reached into her satchel and took out Bella. "I want you to meet someone," Elina whispered, placing the doll in the child's lap. "Her name is Bella. She's very brave." The little girl blinked, then slowly touched the doll's worn fabric. Her small fingers curled around it like it was a lifeline. "You can keep her," Elina said gently. "She's been with me through many nights. Now she'll stay with you." For the first time in days, the girl spoke, just one word: "Thank you." Elina smiled. That was all she needed. The next morning, the hospital buzzed with uncharacteristic energy. Elina arrived early, her eyes still heavy from a restless sleep. She didn't expect the commotion, nor did she expect to be summoned by the head of the hospital himself. "Come with me," he said, without explanation. They entered the executive conference room, where several sharply dressed individuals stood with grim expressions. In the center was a tall man in a navy suit, his presence commanding. His face was lined with stress, but his eyes were searching, desperate. Beside him stood the little girl from room 214, cradling Bella. The moment she saw Elina, the girl ran forward and hugged her tightly. "Daddy," she said, looking up, "this is the nurse who gave me Bella." Elina's breath caught. The man approached slowly, extending a hand. "I'm Samuel Hartman, CEO of Hartman Industries. And this is my daughter, Lily." Elina froze. The Hartman name was synonymous with luxury, wealth, and power. She had never imagined such a connection. "Lily hasn't spoken to anyone since her diagnosis," Mr. Hartman continued. "But this morning, she told me about a kind nurse who gave her a doll named Bella. My daughter smiled today, for the first time in months." Elina felt her cheeks flush. "She's a strong girl," she murmured. Mr. Hartman looked down at Lily, then back at Elina. "You gave away something precious to you, didn't you?" Elina nodded. "Bella was the only thing I had left from my childhood. And yet, you gave it to a stranger. She needed it more." Silence stretched in the room, thick with emotion. Then Mr. Hartman said something Elina never expected. "I'd like to offer you a position, personally. Not just as a nurse, but as head of the new pediatric compassion program I'm starting. Full funding. Full creative freedom. I want you to teach others what it means to truly care." Elina was stunned. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Opportunities like these weren't given to people like her. They weren't offered to orphaned girls who grew up in silence. And yet here it was in front of her. Lily tugged at her hand. "Will you still visit me?" Elina knelt, cupping the child's face. "As long as you want me to." And so, what began as a quiet act of kindness in the dark hours of night turned into something greater, an awakening. Elina's story spread throughout the hospital, then beyond its walls. Media outlets picked it up. The nurse and the doll became a headline that moved thousands. But Elina never chased the attention. She stayed close to the children, walking softly, speaking gently, and giving where others hesitated. Meanwhile, Mr. Hartman kept his word. He established the Bella Foundation, dedicated to the emotional healing of pediatric patients through compassionate care, play therapy, and nurse-led interventions. Elina was appointed director, and under her quiet guidance, hospitals across the region began adopting her methods. Lily recovered slowly, gaining strength every week. She carried Bella with her always, treating the fragile doll as a guardian of her dreams. One spring afternoon, as Elina walked through a newly renovated children's wing, decorated with murals of stars, butterflies, and smiling nurses, she saw a little boy crying in a corner. She knelt beside him, her presence calming as always. "I lost my teddy," he sniffled. Without hesitation, Elina took out a small cloth rabbit from her pocket. Not Bella, but another token she'd begun carrying for moments like this. "This is Juno," she said softly. "He's looking for a friend." The boy's eyes lit up. And just like that, Elina continued her legacy, not with riches, but with ragged toys, quiet smiles, and boundless compassion. The boy clutched the little rabbit to his chest, as though it were spun from gold. Tears still streaked his cheeks, but the sobs quieted. He looked up at Elina, the beginnings of a shy smile dawning on his face. "Will Juno stay with me?" he whispered. Elina nodded. "He will. He's very good at standing guard while you sleep." The boy's mother, who had been watching silently, pressed a hand over her mouth, her eyes glistening. She mouthed, "Thank you," but Elina only offered a small, understanding smile. She had learned that comfort didn't require grand speeches. Often, it was the simplest things, a touch, a doll, the promise of company in the dark, that reached places medicine could not. Later that day, she walked the hallways alone, letting her fingers drift along the mural of Bella that now adorned one corridor wall. The artist had captured every frayed edge of the doll's dress, every detail of the mismatched eyes. When the mural was unveiled, Elina felt both a pang of loss and a swell of gratitude. Bella was no longer hers alone, but a symbol shared by every child who had ever felt afraid. She paused beneath the painted image, remembering the many nights she had clung to Bella herself, a little girl in an orphanage dormitory where no one came to tuck her in. If someone had told that lonely child that someday her doll would inspire a foundation, she would have never believed it. In the weeks that followed, the Bella Foundation blossomed beyond anyone's expectations. Donations poured in from all over the country. Families who had read the story in newspapers, business leaders who wanted to be part of the project, and ordinary people who simply felt moved to help. The funds were used to create playrooms stocked with toys, art supplies, and therapy tools. Elina insisted that every item be chosen carefully. No plastic trinkets meant to impress donors, but things that felt real, warm, comforting. One evening, she stayed late to help the volunteers arrange shelves in the new library corner. The lights were dimmed except for the golden pool of a reading lamp, and the hush of the sleeping ward settled around her like an old friend. She ran her hands over the spines of children's books, imagining the small fingers that would soon turn their pages. Behind her, she heard a quiet footstep. She turned to see Mr. Hartmann standing there, his suit jacket folded over one arm, his expression thoughtful. "Do you ever rest?" he asked gently. "Sometimes," she said with a small laugh. "But it feels important to be here." He studied her in the soft light. "You've transformed this place. You know that, don't you? It wasn't only me." "Maybe not," he said. "But you were the first to see Lily not as an obligation or a burden, but as a child who needed hope." She felt her face warm. Compliments made her uneasy. She preferred to be the quiet presence in the background, not the one whose name appeared in headlines. Mr. Hartmann continued, his voice lower. "When my wife died, I thought Lily and I would never find light again. I buried myself in work. I thought success would protect us, but in the end, all that mattered was the kindness of someone who had nothing to gain." Elina looked down at her hands. "I didn't do it for thanks." "I know." Silence fell between them, comfortable and solemn. When he finally left, Elina lingered a while longer. She walked to the far corner of the library where a small cabinet stood. She opened it and took out a plain cardboard box. Inside were pieces of her past, a photograph of her parents, a handkerchief embroidered with her initials, and a second doll she had begun to sew from scraps of linen and yarn. She had decided Bella should not be her only gift to the world. Night after night, she worked on the doll in quiet moments between shifts, stitching each seam with care. She knew exactly what she would do when it was finished. Days turned into weeks, and little Lily grew stronger. Her hair began to sprout again in soft golden tufts. She started to draw pictures of Bella and Elina, colorful crayon portraits, taped to her hospital wall. The nurses often found her singing softly to Bella, her voice fragile but growing braver every day. One morning, Lily was well enough to leave her room and visit the playroom herself. She stood in the doorway, wide-eyed at the shelves of books and bins of toys, and then she turned to find Elina standing nearby. Do you like it? Elina asked. It's like a dream, Lily breathed. Elina knelt and held out the new doll, freshly finished just the night before. This one had brown yarn hair and a tiny blue dress. I made her for you, she said. Her name is Hope. Lily's eyes filled. She took the doll with reverence, hugging it against her heart. Thank you, she whispered. I'll take care of her. I know you will. As Lily and her father left the playroom together, Elina watched them go, feeling a quiet peace settle over her. She understood that she would never stop carrying her own memories of loss, but she had found something larger than her grief, a purpose that gave every sorrow a place. Later that day, she returned to her rounds. In every room she visited, she left a little piece of her heart, whether it was a doll, a comforting word, or simply her silent presence by a bedside. The children began to call her the lady with the gentle hands. And as the sun set over the hospital, she felt no need for recognition or praise. This was where she belonged. Months passed, and the Bella Foundation became more than an initiative, it became a beacon. Families traveled from towns near and far, bringing children whose spirits had been battered by illness and uncertainty. They came seeking treatment, but also something less tangible, something that could not be prescribed on a chart. They came searching for hope, and somehow, they always found Elina waiting with a soft voice and a presence that made even the darkest corners feel safe. One bright spring morning, the hospital prepared for an event that had been months in planning. The inauguration of the new Pediatric Healing Garden, funded entirely by donations inspired by Elina's story. The courtyard had been transformed into a living tapestry of flowers and winding paths, each stone laid with the names of children who had found solace within these walls. Elina arrived early, feeling both humbled and overwhelmed. She wore her nurse's uniform as always, refusing the more formal dress the staff had offered her. She didn't need to look important. The children knew who she was. As she walked through the garden's gate, she paused beneath a small oak tree planted in the center. A plaque had been fixed to the trunk, engraved with words that made her chest tighten. In honor of those who give their hearts without expecting anything in return. She reached out, brushing her fingertips over the inscription. She felt the past rising up, her childhood in the orphanage, the lonely nights with Bella pressed to her cheek, the quiet vow she had made that if she ever had the chance to ease another child's pain, she would do it without hesitation. That vow had carried her here, to a place she had never dared to imagine. Behind her, she heard the rustle of footsteps. She turned to see Lily walking down the path, her small hand firmly wrapped around her father's. The little girl was radiant in a pale yellow dress, her hair a golden halo in the morning sun. Clutched in her arms were both Bella and Hope, side by side, their soft fabric faces turned toward the sky. Lily ran ahead, her laughter ringing out like music. She threw her arms around Elina with the unguarded affection only children possess. I wanted you to see my dress, she said breathlessly. Daddy said today is very special. It is, Elina replied, her voice warm. It's the beginning of something wonderful. Samuel Hartman approached slowly, his expression serious but soft. For all his wealth and power, he looked simply like a father, grateful, changed, awake in a way he hadn't been before. Ms. Elina, he began, there are no words that can repay what you've given my daughter, or me. But there is something I'd like you to accept. He gestured, and a staff member stepped forward with a small, elegant box. Confused, Elina took it and lifted the lid. Nestled inside was a delicate silver locket. When she opened it, she found a miniature portrait of Bella on one side and a tiny inscription on the other. For the nurse who taught us all to believe again. Her throat tightened. I can't, she whispered. You can, Mr. Hartman said firmly. And you must. Because every time you wear it, you'll remember that you changed lives simply by being yourself. Elina felt tears slip down her cheeks. She had never wanted recognition, but in that moment, she understood that sometimes letting people thank you was part of the healing too. Lily reached up to fasten the chain around Elina's neck. Now Bella is always with you, she declared with a solemnity that made Elina smile. The garden quickly filled with families, doctors, and volunteers. There were speeches and photographs, but for Elina, the most beautiful moment came when the children began to explore the space they had waited so long to see. She watched them running along the cobblestone paths, their laughter ringing against the walls of the hospital. She saw hands clasping new dolls, small arms wrapping around stuffed animals she had stitched late into countless nights. She saw hope planted like seeds in every corner. When the ceremony ended and the crowd began to disperse, Elina remained beneath the oak tree. She closed her eyes and let the breeze wash over her. In that quiet space between past and future, she felt something she had never known before. A certainty that she had finally become the person she needed as a child. A little hand slid into hers. She opened her eyes to find Lily gazing up at her. "Will you always be here?" Elina knelt, her hand resting over Lily's heart. "Even when I'm not right beside you, I'll be here," she said softly. "In every doll, in every garden, in every place that feels safe." Lily nodded solemnly and hugged her again. And in that embrace, Elina knew she had found her purpose, not in grand gestures or headlines, but in the quiet, unstoppable power of compassion. As the sun climbed higher, the garden bloomed around them, alive with color and the promise of healing. And Elina stood at the heart of it all, no longer the humble girl with only one doll to her name, but a woman who had turned her own small story into a legacy. A legacy that would keep growing, as long as there were children who needed comfort and someone brave enough to offer it, expecting nothing in return.